before proceeding towards that customs inbound manufacturing scheme. So here one point is relevant to notice that 2 years has to be counted from the date of grant or variation. Now that term variation is not defined. What is considered to be variation in an exemption notification? In our view, exemptions which are basically variations which are in the nature of exemptions can be considered to be covered by virtue of this provision. So let us say earlier a notification may be giving exemption to a particular category of person, and thereafter that notification was amended to include certain other categories of person also. So maybe the notification would have included SCZ unit later on apart from SCZ developer. So in that case, 2 years would be counted from the date of such amendment. However, the amendments variations which are in the nature of clarification would not be covered under the term variation, and as such the notification would have its validity for a period of 2 years from the date of such grant. Now moving towards customs inbound manufacturing. So in order to make India a manufacturing hub, and we understand that many of the companies or industries here operate on the basis that they import the goods and thereafter they supply the goods domestically or they export the goods. Now this scheme has been introduced last year in exercise of the power conferred by section 65, wherein it has been declared that any factory will be considered to be private bonded warehouse. There is no geographical restriction. There are no requirement that you need to establish a new factory in order to be eligible under the scheme. So even a small factory without having any various line of products can be considered to be eligible. Operating in any part of the country can be considered to be eligible for the purpose of this scheme. Now this scheme essentially states that this is a scheme for manufacturing and other operations. Now entity, a factory can undertake manufacturing operations and other operations. The term other operations is not defined. So as such, other operations in our view can be repacking, processing, importing in bulk, and thereafter converting these bulk items into smaller packets or smaller pack of items can be considered to be other operations. Whether R&D activities which is being undertaken by a manufacturing unit, because it is more or less considered to be a service, is doubtful, and as such clarity is needed for undertaking other operations. This scheme is relevant to be discussed because of the fact this scheme has been introduced in basically to implement the government endeavor to make India Atmanirbhar Bharat. So accordingly, what benefits are being provided are as such. First, that import of raw material and capital goods are allowed to be without payment of duties of customs or IGST in the bonded manufacturing facility. One of the benefit from the earlier scheme, that is of EOU, or let us say we have advanced license or EPCG license holders, is that there is no requirement or there is no obligation of exports. Now it is not necessary that you should be undertaking 90% of the exports against the from the items which you are importing without payment of duty. So it essentially means that your export obligation is not required here. You can import the goods without payment of duty and simply can export the goods. Now basically it means that there is no regulation from the department side. So regulation is only at the time when the registration is granted. That is one time physical verification is being conducted to identify that private bonded warehouse is actually there and would actually be operating there. Benefits are in addition to the existing benefits. Now another point relevant to note is, now you may be importing goods without payment of duties, and you may like to import, or let us say domestically procure capital goods against EPCG license. in that case it is very much eligible that you operate two schemes simultaneously. That is this one wherein you are operating as a private bonded warehouse, and you are also undertaking import of goods or domestic procurement of capital goods against EPCG. Now that is eligible, and as such there is no legal embargo in that case. Upon exports, the corresponding duties stand waived. The corresponding duties here implies that the import duties stand waived. Upon clearance to domestic market, applicable duties would be applicable. The duties which were actually exempted at the time of import would be made applicable. Pay duties upon removal of capital goods, de-linked to export obligation, applicable even for importers engaged in sale or removal of goods in domestic market. As I said, there is no particular ratio which is going to be applied here, that you need to export this much percentage and you need to undertake domestic this much percentage. As such, there is no criteria where it needs to be made a eligibility condition for this, for the purpose of getting enrolled for the scheme. Principle of self-assessment followed. Commissioner of Customs, single point of contact, common application cum approval form for license, no regular visits by officers, unlimited period of bonded warehousing, all records digitally in single format. So there is one point which has been missed to be, I think, missed to be provided as a benefit under this scheme, is that under the present scenario, supplies by SEZ, inter-unit supplies by SEZ as such is exempt between SEZ or UU. However, when SEZ or UU may be supplying the goods to bonded warehouse, in that case, the exemption is not available. No benefit of duty drawback is eligible. So this is again a point which has been missed out here, that no duty drawback is eligible. However, considering the fact that the purpose of this scheme is to provide facility to those persons who are majorly importing the goods and exporting the goods. Now, as such, duty drawback, as I said, would not be applicable because no duty has been paid on imports, and no duty is liable to be paid on exports. So as such, duty drawback, even though not provided, doesn't make much difference. But there may be some cases where you are domestically procuring certain items on which customs or excise may have been applicable, and in that case there is no drawback is being provided. Next is customs rules of origin. Now it is very relevant to note that we have various trade agreements with various countries, free trade agreement, preferential trade agreement, comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, wherein duties are prescribed. So one of the duty which is being prescribed is a preferential rate of duty, wherein if you are importing goods from that particular country with which India has the trade agreement, in that case, that preferential rate of duty is applicable. Now, how to determine that preferential rate of duty is from the fact that the goods should have been imported from the country wherein with which India has the agreement. Now, many a times what used to happen was, we actually apply various anti-dumping duties and all these duties when we are importing the goods from China. Now we have our Asian FTA agreement with the South Asian countries, and one of the countries is Sri Lanka. So for example, it is Sri Lanka. In that case, what a person does is, he, rather than routing his goods directly from China, because there are anti-dumping duties and various other duties, what he does is that he create establishment in Sri Lanka, take the benefit of that FTA, which provides lower rate of duty when the goods are exported to India, and as such the benefit is being taken, and this leads to tax evasion, duty evasion, and the purpose of this FTA is also get defeated, because of the fact there are various parameters which are being decided by government before entering this FTA. There are criteria like that we are going to provide this much benefit, this much revenue is going to be a loss to us, and simultaneously our Indian persons who are actually exporting these goods to the country with which India has the FTA would be saving these much amount of duties. So there are certain calculations which are being done, and when you route these type of transaction from a country which doesn't have FTA with India, that essentially means that government is losing its revenue, and in a way also dumping and low quality goods are being dumped into India, because again, as I said, the preferential trade agreement gives a preference even in terms of clearance. So there may be lesser number of checks which are being applied on a particular goods when it is being shown to be imported from a particular country. So one is duty evasion, the second is dumping of goods. So this certificate of origin criteria has been introduced, and a certificate of origin is required for every case wherein the importer is interested to take the benefit of preferential rate of duty. Mere certificate of origin would not be sufficient. Additionally, this will alone would not be sufficient. The importer has to furnish various information. Now, let us say uh, there may be a FTA, and in which 10 number of HSN items would be considered to be given a preferential rate of duty benefit. The importer may be procuring 15 number of items from that country. Now the exporter has to issue certificate of origin. That exporter country has to issue certificate of origin to Indian importer. Indian importer, while filing the bill of entry, has to mandatorily declare for each item. There were 15 items. He has to declare on 15 items whether on in respect of each item preferential trade agreement is applicable or not. Preferential tariff is applicable or not has to be declared mandatorily by the Indian importer. Additionally, what happens is, if in case the Indian importer doesn't declare so, or is not able to furnish the certificate of origin, in that case inquiry can be initiated, and till that time preferential tariff benefit would be suspended, not only for that particular importer, even for all the importers who are procuring the goods from that exporter who is located outside India. So even in respect of that importers, the benefit is going to be suspended. The inquiry would be initiated and verification would be undertaken whether the criteria which is being prescribed by the trade agreement is being fulfilled or not. So some of the cases wherein a proper officer can exercise his power is certificate of origin not in prescribed format, certificate of origin not produced at the time of filing of bill of entry. Now the rule says if you have to obtain the preferential trade agreement benefit, you have to provide certificate of origin at the time of filing of bill of entry. Here there is a legal embargo, in the sense various trade agreement provide condonation in respect of filing of certificate of origin to get the preferential trade agreement. Now we have SAFTA trade agreement wherein it is specifically provided that the concession should be given in respect of those cases where the importer is not able to furnish certificate of origin, where there was force majeure because he haven't received the certificate from the exporter, and the exporter haven't got the certificate because of the fact there was some problems going in that foreign country, or let us say the authority was not supporting in that foreign country. Then then there is a waiver provided of few number of days, that certificate of origin can be obtained later and can be furnished. Even then the preferential rate of duty would be applicable. However, here it is specifically provided that if you don't provide the certificate of origin at the time of import, at the time of filing of bill of entry, no benefit would be given. So this is the one legal embargo. Again, another legal embargo is various trade agreements provide that retrospective certificate of origin can also be issued by the exporting country. That clause or that room has not been provided here in the this customs certificate of origin rules, and as such To this extent, these rules are actually in as functioning diagonally opposite to the mandate which is being signed by India with the foreign countries. He can require certain information and penal action can be initiated. Now, again, very relevant change which has been brought by customs recently is similar to the one which was introduced in GST, wherein it was specifically provided that you have to undertake Aadhaar authentication for all of the key managerial personals. Similarly, customs KYC has been introduced, and this KYC is stated to be applicable to the person who are actually going to take undertake import and export of goods alongside customs broker. So majorly it is applicable on the newly engaged importers and exporters. However, it can be made applicable to the existing person. So let us say a person may be exporting goods from 10 years, and this can be made applicable even to those persons by the commissioner. Entire process would essentially be driven online. So online here implies that it would be driven by the common portal, which is being recently notified as the ICE Gate is going to be common portal. Documents has to be submitted within 30 days. In case of existing persons, and in case of newly registered person, again it has to be submitted within 30 days. Thereafter, not just the furnishing of documents, apart from that, Aadhaar authentication is also required. So documents furnishing along with documents stating that you are financially capable of importing and exporting has to be furnished. So examples given are income tax return, your GST returns can be furnished to demonstrate that you are financially capable to import and export. Apart from that, Aadhaar authentication has to be undertaken of the key managerial personnel. Once that is done, physical verification has to be undertaken by the proper officer of the principal place of business, which is being mentioned in the IC registration. IC registration requires us to mention an address of principal place of business. That address would be verified by the proper officer. That physical verification is mandatory, unlike under GST law, wherein it was specified that physical verification would not be required where you have already undertaken Aadhaar authentication. Here that is mandatory. However, that can be waived by JC, Joint Commissioner, or AC, that is Additional Commissioner, in cases where Aadhaar authentication is undertaken. So first is there would be physical verification irrespective of the fact whether you have undertaken Aadhaar authentication or not. However, that can be waived by JC or AC if Aadhaar authentication has been undertaken. Verification to be completed within 30 days, 60 days where physical verification is undertaken. This time limit is for the proper officers. Commissioner has been granted following powers if the verification is not completed successfully or the information is not submitted correctly. The powers are n number of powers are granted. So first is your clearance of goods can be stopped. Your export clearance can also be stopped. Exemption benefit can also be stopped. Sanction of refund drawback can also be stopped. License registration under Customs Act can also be stopped. Any other benefit which arises can also be stopped, whether it is monetary or non-monetary. So all the benefits which are being available or which can be envisaged under the Customs Act would be blocked. And even in respect of you say that foreign trade policy benefits which are being granted by way of customs would also be stopped. Now this is the last topic since we are also running out of time to take up the queries thereafter. So recently Supreme Court ruled one of the landmark ruling in the case of Canon India. So all the gist is already provided in this PPT. So first the issue was in respect of there were some cameras being imported by importer, that is obviously Canon India and Sony, Panasonic. There were various n number of taxpayers whose petition was decided jointly by the Supreme Court. DRI initiated a recovery of tax and issuance of show cause notice in exercise of the power conferred under section 28(4). 28(4) section of the Customs Act is applicable where there is a fraud, collusion, willful misstatement, etc. Now it was notices were issued. These notices were adjudicated and were decided against the assessees. So these were decided against the assessees, and thereafter petition was filed before Honorable Supreme Court that DRI, which is issuing us show cause notice, is not authorized under the Act, is not the proper officer under the Act to issue show cause notice. Section 28(4) specifically provides that in case of fraud, collusion, misstatement, the proper officer. So the word he used is the proper officer can issue show cause notice for recovery and for giving an opportunity of being heard, so and so forth. So DRI issued show cause notice. That show cause notice here were challenged, and here it was specifically argued that the power to issue show cause notice under section 28(4) is conferred on the same proper officer or the incumbent or the successor proper officer who has taken that position to issue show cause notice under section 28(4). DRI, since DRI is not the proper officer and is also not the incoming officer, cannot issue show cause notice because DRI is not the proper officer for the purpose of section 28(4). Section 28(4) grants power to the officer had the legislature intended that any officer can issue the show cause notice. Then in that case, it would have been mentioned that any proper officer could have issued the show cause notice. Basically, word the would not have been used and word any would have been used in that place. So in the sense, it was specifically provided that DRI is not the proper officer because DRI has not undertaken the assessment of the goods. The power of reassessment must also be exercised on the same officer. Now, as Arvindji stated earlier, that legal reference can be taken from the Canon India ruling, where Supreme Court observed that if you are going to grant power to two officers who are functioning under two different departments of the Government of India in respect of the same transaction, that is, it is going to create anarchy and it is going to create a lot of problems for the taxpayers, because we haven't seen any statute being interpreted or being implemented like this. So this was the observation of Honorable Supreme Court in this regard. Ruling, it is essential to note that ruling was delivered a month back and review petition has also been filed by the department to review this ruling before the Honorable Supreme Court around a week back. The ruling has placed reliance on the Honorable Supreme Court ruling itself in the case of Syed Ali, wherein also show cause notice issued by a person other than the proper officer were set aside. So in terms of legal provision, so these are the observations of Supreme Court. In terms of legal provision, when we go to legal provision, section 234 specifically provides that proper officer means an officer of customs who is assigned those functions by the CBIC. Now, proper officer means an officer of custom, and who is the officer of custom? Officer of custom means an officer who is appointed by virtue of section 4. DRI, since DRI are not appointed by virtue of section 4, they cannot be considered to be officer of customs, and accordingly section 234 cannot be applied in respect of DRI because DRI are not proper officer. Section 234 can be applied to make an officer of customs a proper officer in respect of a particular task by CBIC. Since DRI are not the officer of customs, and accordingly they cannot become proper officer. So essentially this means officer of customs is a class and proper officer is a subclass, because first you have to be essentially a officer of customs, and only thereafter you can become a proper officer for the purpose of section 234. It was also observed that a officer of different department can become a proper officer, provided first a notification should be issued by the central government in exercise of the power conferred by section 6, wherein section 6 provides that any other officer of any other department can be considered or can be appointed for the purpose of various actions or tasks for issuance of show cause notice, for